money is the biggest idol in the Bible because it is the one idol that deludes you the most, thinking that you are comfortable and stable and secure as long as you have it. But those things can only be found in God. Security can only be found in God. You don't believe me? Wait till you're in a situation that money can't get you out of. Wait till you see your loved one hooked up to a machine in the hospital. I don't care how much money and insurance you have. Money's not going to save that person's life. Have you guys ever been there? Money is, we assume money is always the answer. Now you guys are thinking, no. I'm more mature with that. You can move on from this test, Andrew. I conquered money. Okay. Here's a little test I do. And I'm going to be able to read everyone's mind, like prophecy time, right? Now, think of the number of how much you would need to make today in your salary to wipe away any worry so that you will never have to worry from this minute forward. How much would you have to get paid? Any number. No limits. Now, I'm a prophet. I know I could read all of your minds. You guys all thought, now tell me your number, right? No, I'm kidding. Right. So, you guys all thought of a number higher than your current income. I don't think any of us like, I make too much. You got to take some of it. This is too much. No. And what does that tell us? We all assume that the way we get rid of our worries, the solution is what? We just need higher income. And you know what the problem with that is? I could probably find someone that makes that number. I might not know them personally, but we could start scouting the world. And let's ask if they're worry-free. And here's how I know how enticing and strong the idolatry of money is. If you were to talk to yourself 30 years ago and ask yourself, what would be the income that you could dream of as something like, oh, if I made this, I wouldn't worry. I bet you many of you are making that, if not more, than what you thought when you were 22 years old. And do you know, is your stress any less now than it was at 22 out of college? If not, it increased. How did that happen? You make a lot more now than you did at 22 years old. Do you not? And I don't see any smiling faces here. I didn't see any of you coming like, you go, right? Contentment doesn't come with money. Now, why is that such a big deal to God? God talks about money. Jesus talks about money more than heaven and hell combined. Why? It's not because he's after your money. It's because money has a hold of our hearts. And we're letting money make us think we are secure and content and happy when in reality, we are not. That's why the test of treasure matters. Here he starts with the poor. He starts with those who don't have money. And he says in verse 9, let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation. Now, if you notice the word boast, it's going to be contrasted later on with humiliation, right? Exaltation, humiliation with the rich. Now, the word lowly refers to a poor person, and he's going to contrast this poor person with the rich person in the very next verse, of verse 10. Now, we know this poor person is a Christian because he says what? Lowly brother. Not one time have you noticed, does he ever call a rich person a brother in this letter? No. So we know he's not contrasting a rich Christian with a poor Christian. He's talking to poor Christians because the readers of this letter were all poor at this time. Some of them were probably rich before, but they've lost their property and everything at this point, right? So at this point, they're all no land. They've lost everything for Jesus. He's contrasting them with the very next verse when he's talking to the unbelieving, powerful, rich people in their society. The issue is not whether you're rich or poor. The issue is what? Godly or ungodly. There's godly rich people and there's ungodly rich people. There's godly poor people, ungodly poor people. So he's not demonizing the rich here, but what he is contrasting is the difference between the poor and the rich during James's times tends to be highlighted in the way they interact with God as well. James says this is a lowly Christian, a lowly poor Christian, but he tells them that they can boast in one thing. Now, boasting we think is a sin, is not a sin. What is a sin is if you boast in the wrong thing. But remember what Jeremiah 9:24? Don't boast in your wealth, your strength, but boast in one thing. You can boast in one thing in the scriptures is what? That you know the Lord. That's what he's repeating here. The same concept to the poor Christian. He's saying, even if nobody gives you reasons for you to boast, even if you feel like there's nothing to be proud about, you could be proud about one fact, that you know God. Now, you know why James says this to people who are poor? Because people who are poor are not honored in our society. I've seen a Forbes 100 richest people. I've never seen a Forbes 100 poorest people. I've seen many interviews of billionaires. I haven't seen interviews of people working at Dickies or McDonald's before. We clap when someone starts minimum wage and then becomes what? Rich. Because we attribute becoming wealthy as always a positive thing and an accomplishment. Do you realize that? We always congratulate people when they become wealthy. Do we ever congratulate people when they become poor? What does that mean? We're attributing moral judgments on rich or poor when being rich or poor is an amoral thing. Being rich or poor is nothing moral about it. It's a tool. Money is a tool. There's nothing evil or good about money. It's simply a tool. It's like if you have 10 cattle and you have 1 cattle, if you have 2, it's just a commodity. Yet we attribute significance, importance, and value. Do you see that? That's the same way during James's time too. It's not much different. Who was the one that was on? Even these poor Christians, you know who they were looking up to? The rich. Because later on, he's going to use the analogy in the next chapter of favoritism. What does he say? The rich person comes, he's like, sit in the front. The poor person comes, like, even they were doing that. And they were poor. Why are poor people looking up to rich people when that's not even one of you? Like, that's what James gets boggled about. James grew up poor, by the way. He knows this by experience. He's not speaking theoretically. He knows being poor doesn't give you a lot of reasons to find much hope and to boast in or to be proud about anything. But he says there's one thing you can boast in. Your exaltation in God. That you know God. Because it is easy to think that somehow you're unimportant, God doesn't see you, and you're not valuable. Because that's what the world is telling you. But James is saying, no, you are valuable. Because later in chapter 2, verse 5, he says, God has chosen those who are poor in the world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom. You're valuable to God because you're part of his kingdom. So even if you feel like you're worthless, God doesn't see you that way. Even if no one thinks you're important because you don't have a high-paying job, God doesn't see you that way. See, the test for the poor is to know that God still sees you and loves you and cares for you even though you don't have anything to show for it. So what does he say to the rich? He says this. By the way, later on he's going to say this in chapter 5, verse 1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Doesn't sound very positive. You are happy now, rich people, James is saying, but one day you will weep and howl in judgment. Look at how he describes their riches in verse 10. The rich in his humiliation, remember the poor in their exaltation, he's contrasting exaltation and humiliation. Why should the rich be, humbled in their humiliation? Because like a flower of the grass, he will pass away. So the poor will be exalted, the rich will be humiliated. The poor will be part of the kingdom and receive the crown of life, while the ungodly rich will receive judgment. And so considering the fact that this is what's going to happen for those who don't trust in God, even though they have all the money in the world, look at verse 11. For the sun rises with the scorching heat and withers the grass, its flower falls and its beauty perishes. So also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuits. Now, during this time, they lived in a desert. Do you guys in a desert, do you think the sun discriminates between beautiful flowers and common grass? Does the sun not scorch beautiful flowers and only scorches common grass, or does the sun just scorch everything? Right? Don't water for a week and you'll see. Everything's broken, right? So here's James's point. You might have a lot of money, rich people, but you're still just a plant in the end. You might be the most beautiful flower in the yard, but you're still just a plant. And when that judgment of God comes as a scorching sun, you're all going to get burned, whether you have money or not. You think God's going to be like, oh, Elon Musk, come right away. I don't care how you live. You think he cares? You think he's impressed by Mark Cuban? You think God is impressed by anybody who's wealthy? You think he's going to look at your bank account when you step in front of him? Do you see how dumb it is to find your identity in wealth then, based on this idea? You think God is considering wealth in the judgment anyways. No. Whether you're a common grass or a beautiful flower, we're all going to face judgment. We're all going to have to face God at some point. And so he is saying those who chase after wealth, you're doing a foolish pursuit because one day, it will all pass away. In other words, I don't care if you're worth $300 billion today, it's temporary. They always say you don't find a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? I mean, the Egyptian pharaohs tried to be buried with their wealth. What happened? People just looted the tombs, right? You can't bring your wealth with you. So what did it matter if you ended up in life having a big number of your bank account or zero in your bank account. You're still dead. Either way. That's what James is saying. Pursuing after this treasure is a foolish pursuit because this treasure cannot save you, doesn't come with you after this life, and in the end, it doesn't protect you from God himself.